Shalom, this is Shira Sherbow coming to you from Sfat, Israel, and welcome to our Torah for the Nations Women's Gathering. This particular recording and next week's recording are going to be pre-recorded. Usually we go live on Facebook, but I'm going to be out of town for a couple of weeks. And we're going to do a two-part series by request on modesty. And it so happens that this week's Torah portion is a perfect week to talk about modesty, because there's a famous line by the prophet Bilam, and he says when he looks out, he's up on a mountain and he looks down at the Israelites in the deserts, and he says this famous quote, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel." So why was that such a profound statement, and what was he seeing when he looked down and he saw the campsite and the way that the tents were set up? What was he saying? Well, something revolutionary had come into the world. There's all these different cultures everywhere, and all of a sudden there's a community of people in the desert, and they're very different from every other culture because they got these instructions straight from heaven, like, this is how I want you to set up your families and your society, and then go out and be a light to the nations. So Bilam, the evil prophet, sometimes it's your worst enemies that you get the best compliments from somehow. Anyway, that was the case. Bilam, his goal was to curse the Israelites, and every time he tried to speak out a curse, he said something amazing instead. So he said, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel." So the way that they set up their tents was that you couldn't see inside anyone else's tent. They were set up this way, then that way. There was this privacy. So the women in this community were not like the women in other communities, because the way it was at that time in the world, and for years and years in the world too, really just recent history, in America, I grew up where women have we have equal rights. Well, for a long time in the world, a woman was like, in most societies, a woman, the father owned, the man owned his wife and his children. And if it was a pagan society and he decided he wanted to sacrifice one of his children to the gods, he could do that. There wasn't any government set in place. There weren't any laws set in place that would tell the man that he couldn't do what he wanted with his wife and children. And so now Bilam is looking down on this society, and he's seeing something different. He's seeing that the women have a lot of privacy, and the men are separate. There's a lot of separation in Israel, in the Orthodox communities. The men do their thing, the women do theirs, and the women are mostly inside the tent teaching the children. And this was another thing that was very different, because usually only the very wealthy learned how to read, were educated. Every single 5-year-old child was being educated in the tent by his mother. And so they were teaching their children the Torah. So children were learning how to read and write. Children were learning all the laws of the Torah. Their mother, she had her own tent. She had her privacy. And it was something revolutionary in the world. And so he said, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel." So we have a lot of rules, and some of them are unspoken. And I'm going to tell you this is part 1, and next week will be part 2. And one of my good friends, Esther, she has taught actually on modesty, and I asked her if she would speak, and so she's going to talk to you next week about modesty. But this week I'm just going to tell you what it was like for me being in Texas and my idea of what modesty was, and then coming to Israel. And it was so many of the like unspoken modesty rules I didn't know, and I had to kind of like learn by mistakes. So for instance, like when I first met my husband, I dressed in jeans and cowboy boots, you know, and when I came here, that's what I continued to wear. And I noticed right away that most of the women wear skirts. Well, I wasn't really interested in becoming Jewish when I first got here, and we lived in Haifa. We lived by the beach, and I would go out a lot of times and walk the water and walk on the sand for my exercise. And I thought that I was dressed modestly. You know, I would just have like workout clothes on, like sweats and a t-shirt, and I would walk along the beach. And you know, in Texas, that would be considered modest. You know, I'm at a beach. I'm not in a bathing suit. I have sweats on. I feel like I'm covered. I'm modest. And then also in Texas, in most places, I think in the United States, like when you're walking along and you pass someone, whether they're a man or a woman, it's pretty normal to when you pass each other to say good morning, whatever. And you don't think anything of it. You don't think that you're being forward or anything like that. In fact, you feel a little bit rude if you don't say anything. And so this was what I was used to, the way I was used to dressing, the way I was used to acting, what was normal for me. And so here I am, I'm married, but I'm not wearing a skirt. My hair wasn't covered. And so as far as the rules here go, I didn't look married. And as soon as I said good morning to a man, that wasn't acting like someone who was married, but I didn't know that. And then, you know, there would be like some guy on the beach who would say, would you like to go for coffee? And I'd be like, oh, no. And I would, you know, point to my ring, like I'm married. And I noticed that like that didn't seem to matter. And so what I realized later, and when I would talk to my husband about it, and he'd say, if someone asks you out for a cup of coffee, they're not asking you out for a cup of coffee. It's somehow you are giving off a vibe that you're not married, and that they can ask you out for a cup of coffee, which really means way more than that. And I was like, you're kidding me. And he said, no, you have to be very careful. Don't speak. Don't make eye contact. Don't bring your Texas ways here, because it doesn't work. You're going to give off the wrong message. He never told me, you know, you should wear a skirt. He never said you should cover your hair. But he was just like, don't make eye contact with men. Don't say hi, because it'll be taken the wrong way. And I started to notice how other women acted. And there's so many little things. Like even when you go to get on a bus, the women sit by the women, the men sit by the men, and it's just kind of an unspoken thing. Now there's secular places in Israel for sure where that probably doesn't apply. But in the more religious communities, there's definitely a way to do the bus. And everybody seems to know it without speaking. You know, there'll be an empty seat next to a woman, and if a man gets on, he will stand. He won't sit next to her. You know, and if you're new at this, you might think, well, why is he standing? There's a seat right there. But everybody else on the bus who's used to this would know, no, there's no way he's going to sit there. So these are some of the things that you would pick up after you're here a while. And so slowly, I started changing the way I dressed, and it really started when we started driving from Haifa to Sfat, and I started to meet some Jewish Orthodox English-speaking women. And, you know, just sitting in class with a bunch of women, you see what they're all wearing. You see how they act. I started to notice, you know, between what my husband told me and just how I started to notice, like, you pass someone on the street, it's perfectly normal here to just not make any eye contact, not say hi. Now, a woman could say shalom to another woman, but a lot of times even women, unless you know them, you know, but if you know them, of course you're going to say something. But you know, if you're just taking a walk and you passing a complete stranger, it's perfectly normal. Like, they're in the zone, you're in the zone, and you just kind of give each other their privacy, and it's not considered rude here to not acknowledge them in any way. And so at first that's a little bit hard to get used to, because you think, you know, it's just nothing like, you know, in the southern states where everybody's just so friendly. And it's not that people aren't friendly, it's just a different normal here. So, you know, another thing that happened, I overheard some women just talking about, a lot of times here, people will put their name on a list to have Shabbat guests come to their table. And they'll take in strangers. And so people that come to Sfat and they're staying overnight, like young teenagers sometimes, you know, you'll say, you know, I have room at my table for 2 guests. I have room for 3 or 4 guests. You let them know. And so these people will have some place to go for Shabbat. But I heard one of the women say, you know, why don't they tell these women how to dress? I don't want any naked women sitting at my Shabbat table. And I thought, naked women? And I realized that the definition for naked is not what in the United States, what our definition of naked is naked. But here, if someone doesn't cover their arms, if someone's skirt is too high, or, you know, the neckline is too low, that's called naked. You're naked, or you might as well be naked, kind of. And I don't know. And so she said, so that was a real eye-opener for me, that you could actually feel like you are dressed appropriately, like maybe just wearing a sleeveless top, or I don't know. No, one of the things that women usually wear hose, so you don't have your bare legs show, or you wear a skirt all the way down to the ground if you don't want to wear hose. There's lots of little rules, and we talk about this a lot. And what seems to be the thing to do the safest thing to do is to notice what the other women in the community wear, and don't stand out, don't be different, be in a way that you won't be offensive to them. If they invite you to their house and they have a certain standard of the way that they cover themselves, then it's only like polite and right to keep the standard that they keep also. And so this is what I learned. This is even before I converted to Judaism. I was trying, to really be sensitive to the way people think here and what the definition of naked is. And so it's like, now, that's because we moved here. And so, of course, I wanted to fit in, and I didn't want to offend anyone. But when my daughter came to visit, she goes, Mom, what am I going to pack? I don't have the right clothes. And I said, no. Now, if you're coming and you're just, of course, there's tourists here all the time, and tourists wear whatever they want. And it doesn't bother, it's like you wear whatever you want. But now, if you get invited to someone's Shabbat table, you should pack something in your suitcase where you're not going to, where they're not going to say, she came naked to my Shabbat table. So I told my daughter, you got to bring at least one Shabbat outfit because we're probably going to go somewhere for Shabbat. But if you're just out on the street shopping or doing whatever, then everybody knows the tourists come and they wear what they wear. So that was just my kind of transformation into this culture. One of the things that's really stressed over and over is that we are a body and a soul. We know that. But you have to know, is the body here for the sake of the soul, or is the soul here for the sake of the body? So if you say, wow, I'm really glad I have a soul because it makes my body alive. Once my soul leaves my body, I can't do anything. So I'm really glad that I have this soul because the main thing is my body. I just want to do, all these things with my body. It's all about my body. Or you can say, wow, I'm sure glad I have a body because my soul is working for God and my soul can't get anything done without hands and feet and, so I need my body. So do we have a body for the sake of the soul, or do we have the soul for the sake of the body? And it's kind of like, I heard it put like this one time, like when you have a piece of fruit, like an orange, and there's the inside fruit and there's the peel. So the peel is on the outside, so that's like the body, and the fruit is on the inside, so that's like the soul. You can't see the soul. So for a long time, they work together, the peel and the fruit on the inside, right? Because the fruit needs the peel, the soul needs the body to become everything it needs to be. But it's at one certain point, the peel's going to come off. The body's going to die. And the soul will have reached, its perfection. It's going to be this beautiful fruit. It's not going to need the peel anymore. And the peel will have served its purpose. So the peel is for the sake of the fruit, not the fruit for the sake of the peel. The outside is for the sake of what's on the inside. So what's really important is what's on the inside. And I have to just end with something that I heard a couple of days ago by Gutman Locks. And I don't know if you know Gutman Locks, but he lives up in Jerusalem, and he's always there by the wall of Jerusalem, and he always does these little videos. And so he was talking about, he sees how women are dressed. Schools come, they'll bring a busload of kids, like high schoolers, to the wall. And he said that some of the girls that come to pray at the wall, they come dressed just like they're going to the beach. Like they don't even take into consideration that this is a holy place, there's going to be people praying, But the main thing that when girls dress a certain way, the main thing that they want is they want to feel beautiful, and they want and they want to be noticed. And so sure enough, guys will see these girls and like, wow, pretty girls, beautiful girls, and they'll notice their bodies because they're showing their bodies. And so of course the guys notice, and the guys will make comments, and then the girls get what they want. They get the attention. So then here comes a busload of girls dressed modestly, with their skirts and their blouses. And the most important thing that they show by the way that they're dressed is, don't see me for what's on the outside, see what's on the inside. And so there will be the men that notice these girls, and they'll say, wow, I could really make a family with her. She looks like just the girl I need to be a wife, to be the mother of my children, to go through life with. And so, however, and he said that both sets of women got what they wanted because they had a message, and men are going to look at the way a woman's dressed, and he'll notice if she's beautiful, if her body is beautiful. And he'll also notice the woman that's covering her body. And then he's thinking, this is the kind of woman that I can trust, that's not going to be walking along the beach saying hi to everybody and being asked out for coffee. She knows the rules. She would know how to act as a married woman. You can tell the women that have been raised to know where to sit on the bus, who to make eye contact with, modesty is not just how you dress. It's all about just how you carry yourself, how you just maneuver through life. Like you're out and about and you're doing all the things, but you're doing it in such a way that when people look at you, they can tell right away. They can tell right away if you're available or if you're married. And so you shouldn't give like a mixed message, like I was given. Even though I was married, I wasn't aware that I was acting like someone that wasn't married. So I had to figure it all out, just change the way that I, when I walk, I'm just like in the zone. Don't look, don't talk. I know how to dress now. And anyway, so back to Bilam when he said, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel." This is the kind of thing he was talking about. I don't know if you know this about married couples, but there's like 2 weeks out of every month that the woman is called, she's unclean, but she's on her monthly cycle. So all the time that she's on her monthly cycle plus an added week, there's this separation. And so a man, there's so many rules that a man, it's such an opposite thing of, well, you're my woman and I can do what I want and you just have to, you're below me. It's like God set up a society where even when men would go to war and they would capture a woman, there were so many rules around that. I mean, it's a system of a lot of built-in respect and a lot of boundaries and a lot of fences, you would say, like just lines that you don't cross, and kind of just so that everybody knows who's who and what you stand for. And so it shows a lot just in the way you dress and the way you carry yourself. And so modesty is just something different in this society than what I always thought it was. There's a lot more to it. Anyway, we could just talk about this. So this is only part 1. And like I said, this is pre-recorded. And I wanted to just say something to you. I'm about to leave tomorrow. So by the time you see this, I will already be in the States visiting my kids and grandkids. And it just kind of was a surprise. Like 5 out of my 6 kids don't even know I'm coming. Only the one that bought my ticket knows I'm coming. And I can't wait to surprise them and to be there. And then I'll be back in 2 weeks. So I can't wait to get back. But in the meantime, there's a couple of pre-recorded talks like this on modesty. All right. Bye for now. Shalom.